Welcome everyone to the Dulye Leadership Experience Ask the Expert workshop. Please note that this program is being recorded and will be available for subsequent viewing on the DLE YouTube channel. Please keep your microphones muted and cameras off during this presentation. My name is Marcus Coleman. I'm a member of the DLE Advisory Board and a four-time alum of the DLE Gen Now Retreat. I am based in the Berkshires, where I work as a registered client service associate at Raymond James Investments. I will be moderating today's workshop along with my fellow DLE Advisory Board member, Kaylee Carmel, who is an account manager at CompuWorks. Kaylee is also coming to you from the Berkshires. To maximize everyone's learning experience, we have some core DLE ground rules. Please use the chat box for your comments and questions that are topic related. Kirsten of the DLE Programming Committee will be monitoring the chat and will surface your comments or questions to Kaylee and our guest speaker, Dave Hall, during the program. All right, let's get some practice with the chat right now. Please take a few seconds to type in your name, your title, an organization or company, and where you're located. Once again, in the chat right now, type in your name, title, organization or company, and where you're located. Moving on with a few more ground rules. Do your best to minimize distractions and stay focused. Make sure you have a pen and notepad handy so that you're able to take notes and actively participate in the practice exercises that Dave will be conducting. You will have an opportunity to ask Dave questions after his short presentation. Also, please take a few minutes to provide your comments to the workshop feedback survey that you'll receive a link to at the conclusion of today's program. This is an inclusive bonus for completing the survey. Dave has prepared 2 cybersecurity resources that will help you steer clear of hackers. Kaylee?
Thank you, Marcus. And as a reminder, for those of you just getting into the program, please type your name, your title, your company or organization and location into the chat box if you have not already done so. I'm Kaylee Carmel, an account manager at CompuWorks in Pittsfield, Mass., which is where our guest speaker coincidentally is from as well. Before we get started, I would like to gauge our audience with a poll. Nicole, could you please launch our poll and share the results once everyone has answered? I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Dave Hall. Dave is president and founder of CompuWorks, a leading managed IT and technology success provider that works with clients throughout the Northeast from its home base in Pittsfield, Mass. He is an alumni of Worcester Polytechnic Institute. He has over 25 years of experience managing and maintaining the safety of computer networks for a variety of companies in the Northeast. Dave and his company, among other things, help businesses and individuals prevent computer attacks and rescues those who have been victimized by external or internal attacks. A frequent speaker at corporate security events and conferences, Dave has been recognized with the Western Massachusetts Entrepreneurial Hall of Fame Achievement Award, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Blue Chip Award, the Chamber of Commerce of Berkshire's Entrepreneur of the Year. Dave, from the feedback we received, it looks like our registrants could use some help lowering their cyber risk, and we are ready for your expert advice.
Thanks, Kaylee. Poll results are coming in here. Again, thanks everybody for coming. And I hope you'll find this interesting. I am trying something a little bit different here in my usual presentation, in that I'm trying to get the questions as part of the presentation. So this is not one of the presentations where we wait till the end for your questions. As you think of them, go ahead and send them. We've got a couple of people who are monitoring the chat, and they'll feed me the questions. So a couple of things that I'd like for you to get out of this presentation are, I want you to get specific things that you can do to identify these various attacks and how to protect yourself against these cyber scams. And then, like they mentioned, at the end, there's some bonus takeaways for people who complete the survey. We have a brand new one in there, the cyber profile protection worksheet, which Kaylee and I developed. I think it's got some really good info in there. I'll explain more about that one later. And then 40 pretty good internet tips of protecting yourself as you browse on the internet. So the topics of discussion today are, we're going to go over just the top 3 attacks and some examples of each one of the attacks, and then what you can do to defend yourself. So there are 99 ways to hack into your computer and scams, but really there are just three main categories today that you need to worry about. We're going to cover all 3. So the top attacks today that we're going to cover are phishing scams, compromised website, and internet fraud. The first one we're going to take a look at is a phishing scam. And I think everyone has received some of these emails. Here's an example of one that I recently got. I stack up these examples for these presentations. We're going to take an in-depth look at this one, but phishing is where someone tries to send you an email and trick you into either clicking on a link in the email, or in this particular case, clicking on the attachment that's with this email. And we're going to try to dissect this one a little bit here and tell you what to look for. So a couple things on this one here. So it looks like it's coming from Genuine Parts. If you're somebody who is ordering parts for your car or something like that, this could catch your interest. You may have recently had a transaction on there. So a couple of things here that you can look at to identify that this, in fact, is a fake email. One is, although it says Genuine Parts right here, which is easily faked by the hacker, it's really coming from Juan at regalasplaceteros.com. And my Spanish teacher just shed a tear on my pronunciation there. It's 3 years of Spanish down the drain. But anyway, obviously not coming from Genuine Parts. The other thing that's a bit of a clue here as well is they have not identified who you are. If this was truly an invoice coming from a company that you do business with, they're going to know who you are. And they are likely to try to prove that they know who you are so that you'll open up their email. The final one on this particular one is the attachment. You can see it gives the name here as details.html, which is an unusual attachment. It's actually going to lead you to some web code that's going to launch. And who knows what it's going to do. I did not click on this, so I don't know exactly what it would do, but it's going to do 2 things. It's going to install a piece of software on your computer that will allow the hacker to attack your computer, or it's going to try to trick you into giving up your credentials for your email, your Gmail, whatever. So some obvious things in here to identify this particular phishing email. Kaylee, go to the next slide. So here's another one here. So this one here is a little bit tricky. Coming into UPS Center at ups.com, that looks legitimate here. It's got a graphic in there that seems to be UPS, and then it takes you to the UPS billing center here. So a couple of things on this one here. Now, this address here can be faked by the hacker. And if UPS, and I actually looked into this, they don't quite have their, believe it or not, they don't quite have their email as secure as they could, or our spam filter would have filtered this out because it's not coming from the ups.com email server, but they've got a few things missing protection-wise. So even a large company like UPS can miss on some of the security things that they can do that help your mail server identify this as a phony address. And the other part is both Apple and Microsoft through Outlook do all that they can to assist the hacker in hiding their identity. There's a lot of things that they could put on this email, at least in the Outlook view and the view on your Apple devices, that could show you that this is actually coming from another source other than UPS. But you're not going to have that info. So the other part here is we talked about, even though this tells me I seem to have an account at the UPS billing center, They don't seem to know who I am. This is like me at a party where I've forgotten the person's name and they go, "Hi, Dave Hall. How are you doing, Dave Hall?" And I go, "Hi, you." And I've totally forgotten their name. But so this is here. This is a big clue here, in my opinion. You're going to see tons of this stuff where they pretend to know who you are, but they don't really know who you are. This is going out to 1 million people. I want to differentiate that from another technique, which is called spear phishing. A spear phishing email is a more precise email where they've done some research, some reconnaissance on your company and maybe you, and they have maybe identified people at your company who are publicly identified, and they're trying to aim that familiarity at you. So you may see something here where the CFO is identified as wanting you to buy an iTunes card and send him the serial number of it. You know, typically on these phishing ones, you're going to get something that is going to not identify you at all. So that's a bit of a clue here. Now the other clue here, so this is a technique. So when you get one of these, you see how this link here, view and pay your invoice. You can hover over this link, and it won't show up here on the presentation, but down in the lower left corner, at least in Outlook, you will see where this will actually take you. And one of the other things you can do is you could right-click this link and then copy the link into Notepad, at least on a Windows computer. And a Notepad is just a text-based word processor. It doesn't have any graphics in there at all. So it will remove the graphic here, which says view and pay your invoice, and you'll actually see the link that's behind it. So I've made a copy here on the next slide where I'm showing you what's going to happen in Notepad, which is your friend. And you can look at this link here. Now I hear what you're saying. You're going, "Hey, Dave, this is actually going to go to ups.com. What's up with this one here?" And I'm going to teach you now how to read this URL, which really could be one of the single most things to prevent you from actually going to a site where you don't want to go to. And in this particular link, let's actually move to the next slide, and then Kaylee, you can go back to this slide. We'll examine this later once you're armed with knowledge here. So the key is when you're trying to identify one of the, they call it a URL, Uniform Resource Locator. When you're trying to figure out where is this link going to take me, the key is to find this first / So not the double one here, but the first single / right there. And back up to the whatever.com or the whatever.whatever. And in this case, you can be assured that this link will take you to Microsoft.com. The next link, if we follow along here, so we're going to see not the / here, but this one over here, /, we can back up and we can see, even though it says Microsoft.com, which is easily spoofed by the hacker, they can't spoof this part, hacker.ru. So this link here will take you to hacker.ru. And they've tried to make it obscure here on where they're going by tricking you with the Microsoft.com. But really, you know that this is going to hacker.ru, probably not where you want to go. The final one here, same deal. We find that first /, single /. This one here, even though they've entered all this Microsoft.com stuff at the end, they can do whatever they want over here. There's no rules restricting them. So this again will take you to hacker.ru. So there's the key, find that first /, back up and get the whatever.whatever. That's where it's going to take you. So Kaylee, flip back to that other slide. And you can see, even though it says ups.com, really it's going to take you to wykenZD.com, which is probably nothing to do with the UPS company. And it's going to try to get you to click on a link or give up your credentials. So I hope everyone got the word on that. There's the first / right there. That's the one you're looking for, not this one here. Pause on this slide just a second, Kaylee. I have one more point to make here. No, the next slide, sorry. We're going to talk about this later, but see how this one here says HTTPS, and this one over here only says HTTP. The S indicates that your communication is going to be encrypted end-to-end from your computer to this website. Now, it does not mean that this is a legitimate website. All it means is that someone won't be able to snoop on your connection and identify passwords and information that you're exchanging back and forth with that connection. So this is critical when you log on to your financial sites. You want to make sure that you're going to HTTPS. I doubt there are any financial sites anymore that just lead you to HTTP. If they are, I would find a new financial site. They are way behind. But again, it doesn't indicate the site's legitimate. It just means that your traffic is protected. All right, next slide. So hope I didn't get too techie there, but I think that's one of the more important points. All right, so here we've got our final examples of the phishing email. And you can see that this one appears to be going to YouTube, so all good there. They have the YouTube graphic, which means absolutely nothing here. So again, I would right click on this link here, terms of service, paste it into Notepad, and you're going to get, this is going to take you to google.com, which happens to own YouTube, but they could take you, a number of sites are hosted, you know, somewhere on Google servers or Amazon or big companies like that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's legitimate. So when I look at this email, I can't tell you for sure if this email is legitimate or not. I'd have to see way more information to know whether this is actually coming from YouTube. So I would not click on this terms of service. And I actually looked into it. This is a legitimate email. You would be safe if you click terms of service. But if you are truly interested in the YouTube terms of service, A, you need to find a hobby, and B, you can just go to Google or your search engine of choice and key in YouTube terms of service, and you will be directed to the correct link. I don't click on any links in an email if I don't have to. You can always go and search for it. So I think another point of advice there, if you don't need to click on it, don't click on it. And a lot of times you're going to get an email from what appears to be your friend. Now, it could be somebody spoofing their email address, or it could be somebody who's hacked their credentials. And it's going to say, hey, you know, I need you to get an iTunes card for my daughter. Can you get it for me and send it? Or whatever the scam of the day is. Before you do that, you need to get a hold of your friend, whoever's sending that, by either phone or text message, something other than another email, since the hacker may be monitoring their email account, and just verify with them that this is actually the case, that they've actually sent you something that you can open safely. If it's a photo or whatever, very common phishing. So any questions, go ahead and send them in. All right, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so here's number 2, compromised websites. So if you don't keep up with the updates on a website, you potentially could get, your website could potentially get compromised. Now, in this case, they've defaced the whole front page of the website. So this is an obvious one that someone has attacked this website. But the more insidious ones are where the website's intact, but a link is added to it that you click on, and it either installs a bad program or tries to make you give up your credentials. So the key on this one, if we go to the next slide, Kaylee, is you want to make sure that your computer is up to date. If you have a computer and things are out of date on your computer, the hacker may be able to install stuff on your computer without actually even prompting you for you know, your permission to do it. So a lot of times you get that. I'm sure you've seen it. You go to a video site in particular, and they want you to install some sort of video driver. I typically do not do that unless, you know, I know it's something I need to install. I just ignore that stuff. And usually it's just to make their ads work better, which I don't really care about. So that's another piece of advice, is just don't install stuff while you're browsing on the internet. So I'm looking for questions in the chat here. We got a couple that have come in ahead of time. Let me work these in as we go along. All right, so I'll get to a few of those. Again, I mentioned the HTTPS site. Again, doesn't identify it's a legitimate site, just identifies that you're protected on your communication to that site. And I am always looking at the address bar, but you know what I'm talking about, where you would type in the www.google.com or whatever, just to make sure that it's identifying the site that I need to be on, and I haven't ended up being swept away to a different site, particularly before I start entering private information. And then one little handy thing here, and everybody can do this, this is Windows 10, is set this user account control. You can go to the next slide, Kaylee. This is just a clip of the user account control. So go down to your search bar, type user account control, and it'll be the first choice that comes up. Pop that up. Your machine may ask you, let you know that you're going to make some configuration change. And this screen will eventually come up. The default setting is here, and it used to be in Windows 7 that if you jacked it all the way up to the highest privacy level, that it would just annoy you all day long with questions. That is all fixed in Windows 10. And I put mine up to the highest level. I've been at this level since I installed this computer with Windows 10, and it is no hassle. And what this does is anytime something tries to install a program or make configuration changes, it will notify you. And you can answer yes or no. And I want you to read that question every time it comes up and say, am I making configuration changes now? And if you're not, answer no. And if you know that you're adding a display or installing a USB drive or whatever, then you can answer yes. And I just want to know, I want to be the guy who approves things on my computer. I don't want them approved, without my permission. So jack this up. It is of no, it's not going to slow you down. So any questions on that, go ahead and send it. All right, so we got a question here from Scott. Who should I notify if I think my account has been breached? I think this is a really good question. So let's say you're at work or you're home and you click on a link and you go, oh my God, I just gave up my credentials. Or geez, I wasn't supposed to click on that link. If you tell your IT department that you clicked on a link, immediately after you do it, it is easy to fix this. They'll scan your computer, you change your password. It is of no consequence at all. If you try to hide that, you may come in on Monday morning and your computer's been encrypted and you're now the victim of an attack. I think that's it. And if you're a business owner, you want to have an environment where people feel comfortable in letting everybody know that they clicked on a link. And we run so many phishing campaigns against ourselves, mock phishing campaigns, that are, if someone actually clicks on a link at our company, it's become comfortable to say, hey, oops, I goofed up on that one, and everybody laughs. But that's the environment that you want. You don't want this to be heavily penalized where people are going to hide this, because getting hacked is that day is no fun. But so I think that's what you're trying to do is let somebody know right away, and then it's fixable. Now, sometimes the screen will pop up, and I used to have a really good slide for this, and it'll say, suddenly on the screen, I have 42 viruses, and it doesn't even look like your antivirus program. At this point, you actually have no viruses, and they're trying to get you to install their malware. And my advice at that point, if you're not sure what's going on, just power your computer off. And if you haven't been hacked yet, then you'll be fine. Rather than trying to figure out how I'm going to close this out or how to close it out, just power it off. That's always our first advice. Power it off, and then contact your IT department or contact a Gen Z, and they'll help you out.
Dave, I'm just going to ask you to go a little bit deeper in those questions. Okay. I have someone asking, what about for your personal laptop or accounts? If you click on something, what do you do? Like if you're not at work and you don't have an IT department or someone to go to, how do you handle it then?
Well, because you've read the 40 internet tips, you've installed 2 antivirus programs on your computer, your regular antivirus program, and then one called Malwarebytes. And the regular one does real-time scanning, and the Malwarebytes will do scanning when you tell it to scan, on-demand scan, and that goes a little bit deeper probably than your regular antivirus. And so that's the level of protection that I use. You're gonna need to get an expert involved. Now, if you've given away your credentials, you just need to change those passwords, and you need to change any password, any site where you have that password already used. Like say you use the same password on Facebook as you do LinkedIn. The hackers, they have your Facebook password or your LinkedIn password, and they're going to go try it at a number of different financial sites and see if they can get in with your email and that particular password. On the cyber profile protection worksheet, there's a section where you go through and you identify all your financial accounts and you make sure that they're all password protected. And then the final thing is you got to make sure you have multi-factor on your accounts. And we're going to go into all that a little bit later, but that you go from, when you put multi-factor on there, you go from you are going to be hacked someday to you are not likely to be hacked when you have the multi-factor, at least not through that mechanism.
Great.
So I got one on the Mac Windows questions.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
All right. So people ask me this question a lot. Is the Mac safer? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is Apple controls their whole ecosystem. Meaning if you create a program for Apple, you got to sell it through Apple. They vet the whole thing. You have to buy it and you distribute it in your account through Apple. You can't just program something that anyone can have. So it allows them to do a little more, error checking on that. Make sure that they're not slipping in. Now it is possible. It is certainly possible, and you could certainly, take other things. You could certainly get phished through your Apple device. You still need to stay up with the updates on your Apple devices. If you have, in the instructions in the cyber protection profile, mention how to find out what iOS you have on your Apple devices. But if you're still on iOS 13, there is a vulnerability in that where the hacker can send you a text message, and without you even responding to it, can install spyware on your iPhone. And the way they discovered this was they had a journalist for Al Jazeera, the Arab newsletter or Newslink, and he thought something odd was going on with his phone, and so he brought it to a security expert who installed a software on there that showed all of the communication leaving his phone, and they found that it was going to an IP address controlled by Mossad, which is the Israeli secret police, and they had surreptitiously installed this on his iPhone because he only had version 13. And this was at the time, this was a 0-day vulnerability. So nobody even knew about this vulnerability. So a couple lessons there: stay up with the iOS updates and do not piss off Mossad. All right. Any more questions? Should we bless through this? Yeah, so somebody mentioned the Norton. I would install this Malwarebytes. I have instructions on how to download it. I think it's a great little program. If you don't have one of antivirus, I would use that as your antivirus. You're going to pay for it to get the full antivirus control, but you can run on-demand scans for free, and it finds a ton of stuff. Any other questions, Kaylee? The screen's kind of going by here.
I think that's it for now.
Okay. Time-wise, I think we're doing good. All right, so final internet attack here is the internet fraud, where someone is trying to cheat you in a transaction. And these all have a really similar pattern, and I'm going to go through exactly what they are. So what you find, so this one isn't, so there was a Craigslist ad, and this was the response when the person said, hey, I'm interested in this car, and they got this email back. So a couple of things. It's a 2015 Denali. It's got 35,000 miles, and the guy wants 4,300, and I'm out of the country, and I can't really contact you. And they all kind of had this pattern where this deal is way too good to be true. There's misspellings in there, although I think the only one they misspelled was Afghanistan, and I'm not sure I could spell that one either. But you'll find, very poor grammar. There's always some excuse why they can't meet with you. I'm going to give an example a little bit later about, one that involved renting an apartment. But, this turned out to be a fraudulent one. And if you can go on to the next slide, Kaylee, I'll give the defense tactics here. So one thing you can do is Google the exact word of the ad or the response that they sent you. If you took that response and you put it into Google, you'll get the first page that comes up will say, hey, don't respond to this. It's a well-known scam. So my daughter is searching for an apartment in San Francisco, and really good deal. The thing comes back, oh, I'm on a cruise and I'm between management companies, real estate management companies, so I can't get anyone to show you the apartment. Just look in the windows, and if you like it, send me a deposit. It's yours. And so she was questioning this, and so I said to her, take the email you got and just put it into Google. Sure enough, it comes up. This is a scam, and a couple of the clues there are, we're out of the country, you can't reach me, you know, it's a good deal. These things, you know, that's how they try to get you. So they all seem to follow this sort of pattern. If you're looking for that, you can be a little bit more cautious. Red flag on weird payment terms. You know, they're not going to want to follow the system. I don't want to pay you through VRBO. I'll send you a certified bank check. And the way that's going to work is they're going to send you a check for more than what you're asking for. You're going to say, hey, you sent me $2,000. It's only $1,000. And they'll say, oh, well, just send me back a check for the difference. And your good money is going to go back to them. Their bad money, you're going to be stuck with. So all kinds of weird stuff like that. They can never meet with you. You know, don't click on the hyperlinks. Don't call phone numbers within the email. You want to go look up the phone number. If they say, hey, you know, this is your credit card company and there's transactions on here that we want to discuss with you, call this number. Just go and Google your credit card number or look on the back of your credit card and call that number instead. And then ask yourself, did you actually buy a ticket to this $100 million win in the lottery before you send them $400 for fees to the Canadian lottery? So we had one where a client, we do these mock phishing campaigns for clients, and they have about 400 people, and their general manager, she was very certain that their people were very sophisticated. They were not going to fall for this stuff. And I said, well, let's send one out and see what happens before we do the training. So we sent one out, 400 people, and it was a Canadian parking ticket. And click on this link to, you know, see how much money you owe. And they had 77 out of 400 people click on the link. And I said, you are days away from getting hacked. This is terrible. And she was so mad. And this is not a woman to be trifled with. She got on everybody. She made them all take the training. 400 people, 100% took the training. We ran the same phishing campaign again. And it came back, there was one person who clicked on the link, which is an enormous success. And so it was very interesting. But you know, if the timing is right, anybody could get fooled. It's not just a certain type of person. And there are certain types of jobs too. Like we find a lot of HR ends up clicking on links, but they are getting unsolicited emails from people looking for jobs. And you know, you need to take some precautions on that. They can scan those at a time and open them up in a manner that won't allow things to launch, you know, with those documents. All right, so still fielding. I don't know if Malwarebytes works on a Mac. Got another question here. I don't know.
So Dave, I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna change this to the wrap-up slides. I think that's what's next.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna go through some of the questions we got in the registration with you.
Okay. Yeah, let's go through them right now.
Okay. So one of the questions we got was, what are the ways that malware is spread?
So they're going to try to get you to click on an attachment. These attachments have little programs in their macros or something like that that will run automatically and install the program or lead you to a link. You can pick them up from an infected website. You know, they had one where it was a CIA. They dropped USB drives in the parking lot. This is actually in Iran. I don't know if you remember that one where they broke all the machines that were purifying the uranium. And the way they got into the Iranian network was they dropped USB drives in the parking lot, and the people who worked there picked the drives up and plugged them into their computer, and they infected those computers. So that was another way. I mean, that's pretty random. Oh,
all right.
Yes, Google malware bytes for Mac. The word from Scott. Thank you, Scott.
And then we had someone ask, as a one-woman business, how can she protect her clients' information online without spending a fortune? So sticking on a budget, but still protecting the people she's serving.
So Kaylee, I'm going to combine those three questions.
Okay.
They're all business related questions. They're all online. You know, what loss and control mitigations can you do to protect the business with an online retail presence in order to avoid cyber crimes and privacy liability? What is the role of the public sector protect citizen data security? There is a law, now we're in Massachusetts, I know other people around the country, but there's a law in Massachusetts called the Mass Privacy Law. And that law says that if you're a business anywhere in the country and you have private information of Massachusetts residents, you have to identify what that information is, and you have to document how you're protecting that information, and you have to train your staff on protecting and identifying the information. And we found what that did is we helped our clients comply with this law. And what that did is it forced businesses to really look at the private information they're holding and evaluate whether they truly needed this information. We had a client who was saving photocopies and scanned images of checks that their clients were sending them. And that has private information on there. And we asked the question, do you really need this information? And they said, we've never used it. And they got rid of it, and it gets rid of the problem. And I found with all the businesses we went through that they ended up eliminating a ton of this information. And I think that's step one that I would do is you really need to hold this information. And then if you do, you should figure out how to secure it. The best way to make sure it's encrypted if it's online, if it's not, tightly in your control and your private network, it needs to be encrypted. It needs to be encrypted when it's in transit. Another thing, the two ways they could hack your information online is they could attack your online portal, whatever you happen to be using, or they could attack your online information through your local computer. So you got to be running virus alerts or antivirus software. You got to be keeping up with patches, eliminating all the things off your computer that you don't really need. Another thing that is little known, if you're running Office 365, they don't back up your information. That's not part of the deal. If you want Office 365 backed up, you have to buy a third-party program. And I would do that. I think it's important. They say that they'll be able to recover your information, but there's lots of reasons for a backup. There's not a whole lot of due diligence that you can do, on a lot of online information. Makes me nervous, but it's where we're headed. We got to figure it out.
Dave, since you're speaking about backups, we just got a question in the chat from Julia, and she's asking if it's safer to save documents on the cloud or an external drive, and that kind of leads into data being backed up. So do you want to answer that for her?
Yeah, so there's two types of safety. One is, can the hackers get to it? And then the other part is, if you lost this information, could you get it? Like a ransomware comes in, gets on your computer somehow, and what it does is encrypts all the data on your information. And there is no way you can unencrypt this information without the key, which they want to sell you, or if you just go back to your backup and you can restore all the information. So I guess if you're doing a backup, there needs to be a couple of things that a good backup has. One is it needs to have a number of different backup points that you can go back to. It needs to be stored off-site as well as on-site. So if you're storing it in the cloud, that counts as off-site. And if you're storing it on an external drive and you're taking that off-site manually, in the case of a large-scale disaster where your building is lost, you don't want to lose all of your backups at the same time. So there's, so those, you got to ask yourself those questions. Are you protecting your backup information enough? I think I covered the cloud security part. You're a little bit dependent on the cloud provider, and hopefully they are being audited by an outside company. If you had a business, I know that we've seen some banking people on the presentation today. They're getting due diligence letters from any cloud provider that they have who stores their information, and I imagine you could do the same as a consumer.
Great. I'm just going to speed you up a little because we're getting close to our cutoff time and we still have a couple of questions here.
All right.
So what are the most important features of a password manager?
So I did a risk assessment of this in terms of, is this safe or not? And I came to the conclusion that today it is. So I think from a security standpoint, it's not a bad idea. And there's some really good benefits of it if you use it to the full capabilities. So if you're using a password manager, you could make it so you don't even know what the password is. It assigns a randomized 20-digit password that no one could ever remember, protect you against some sort of brute force attack. And it could make sure all your passwords are different between all your different sites. So I believe they all have that capability. That's the basic capability. Some of them have a capability of being able to keep up with password changes easily. They recognize that your credit card site is looking for a password change and they update your information automatically, and some intentionally do not. A bit of a debate there. You know, they try to maintain the fact that they don't know anything about these sites, and you know, they're not they're agnostic in terms of the sites. So you'd want to play around with that a little bit. I actually don't use one. I have a really good system that I actually describe in the cyber protection worksheet. That's how I work that into the conversation again. But I have a technique that I use to keep all my passwords different and all this. But I don't think it's a bad idea.
Great. And Nicole's asking in the chat, do you recommend using a VPN at home or outside of a home network?
Yeah, so what a VPN is it's a encrypted connection, if you will. They call it a tunnel sometimes, where it will guard your connection against anybody snooping that information. So they'd have to be at your firewall, they'd have to be at your ISP, they have to be somewhere along that chain and reading the information, and it guards against that. It also will make it so, let's say you're trying to remote into your office computer. These days, you can't really have that remote port open to the entire world, or people will be hacking away on it all day long. I guarantee you right now, every business firewall, Iran, Russia, China, and believe it or not, the Netherlands are all hacking away constantly at your firewall. And any ports that are open to the outside world, they're going to try to find weaknesses in those ports. So if you have a VPN, you'll be able to close that off to the hacker, and it'll only be open to people who have the credentials for that VPN, which are only your employees. So yeah, VPN's the way to go. Now, there's a little bit of a security issue in that if you open up a VPN into your network of your business, your home computer is the same as if it were on, if you had brought it in and plugged it into your business network. So if your home computer has a bunch of viruses and no antivirus control and it's out of date on patches, you potentially could introduce that into your business network. So we treat computers that are a full VPN into networks as though they are owned by the business that's allowing that, and they should be business issued computers, and they should be fully monitored and protected. So something to keep in mind there.
Great. And then this one is over my head, but will quantum computing make security protocols obsolete?
Answer, yes, it will. But there will be new security protocols to defend against. A quantum computer, you can think of it, it's a computer that can execute many, many instructions simultaneously. And for instance, if it would take 3 years to brute force hack a 15-digit password, a quantum computer could potentially do that in a few seconds. So today's protections are not going to be are not going to protect you against tomorrow's quantum computing. And interestingly enough, they're developing techniques now that will. So if you think about this, anything you have encrypted now that you think is safe, 10 or 20 years from now, someone will be able to unencrypt that very easily using, because you're going to have previous technology on there. But I'm not sure I'd worry about it. I'll be retired then, so I'm not sweating it. You're going to have to worry about it.
All right. So rapid fire round, I'm going to ask you to answer these really quick because we're
All right.
running out of time, but we still want to get to them. So what are some resources available to better educate the community about cybersecurity? Do you know of any?
You know, I would go to your bank. It's in the charter of banks, and the banks are going to be pleased to hear this. But they have to educate their consumers on protecting themselves, and they've got a lot of good info. There's a good info on the government site. What's the one? If you Google, it'll be a .gov site. I just can't think what it is now. Maybe I have it in my notes. But there'll be some info on there about, if you've been hacked or how to avoid being hacked. Homeland Security, I think it's on their site.
Great. There's another question about password management. I know you spoke about that a little, and it's also in the cyber profile protection worksheet. So I'm going to refer people to that for that question. Why does Amazon keep calling me about my account is a question that came through.
Well, because everybody in America has a Prime account. So when they say your Prime account has a problem, people are going to go, I do have a Prime account. How did they know? Well, you and 100 million other Americans. So the scam on that one is they're trying to get you to think that your account is overdrawn and that you owe them money and somehow you're going to have to send them money. They are not calling you, I'll guarantee it. They have a million ways to collect that money, and it won't be by giving you a phone call. So I think that one's you can pretty much count on that one being a fraud. If somebody initiated the phone call, I would hang up and call your bank. If it's pretending to be your bank, your credit card company, call that number, the real number. So we've had some sad cases where person called, they got scammed, and then they called their real bank, and the banker said, yeah, we never would ask that over the phone.
Great. And then last one that came through the chat, Cam asked if you know if DocuSign is a safe way to send and receive sensitive information.
Yes, but be cautious. It's a common phishing theme too. Here's something, you need to go to DocuSign and enter your email credentials and sign off on this and you get free money, or whatever the scam happens to be. So keep your eye out. DocuSign's a common scam on that one. But I did a risk assessment of that particular product, and I think they're pretty well locked down today. I'll say today. Tomorrow might be a different world. If one of the credit bureaus can get hacked, anybody can get hacked.
All right. So I know that we have a couple more slides here that just I'm going to skim through them and have you just go to the bonus takeaway slide and have you kind of do a little wrap up before we turn it back over to Marcus.
Sure. So the bonus takeaways, I have mentioned the cyber profile protection worksheet. What it is Kaylee and I sat down and we just gathered everything into one place that you can go through. It's a checklist, and you can check each thing off as you get to it on securing everything that might be out there for your cyber, your profile out there in the cyber world. And then a few tips at the end that I just like to pass on. Like, I always encourage particularly younger people to get into your 401k. Nothing to do with cyber, but still a good tip. But I think you'll find, and I'm interested in some feedback on this as well. Like I said, this was developed exclusively for the DLE, and I think there's some interesting advice there. Kaylee went through it. Took about 2 hours, and I think you'll be able to lock down everything. At least assess where there might be issues.
Yeah,
and the
2 hours. The 2 hours spent now is going to save you the 24 hours it's going to cost you to change all your bank accounts and every other account you own if you do get hacked. So
exactly. And then some 40 tips that I've kind of compiled over the years that can help you out. And we've gone through a couple of them already, but some stuff that you can take a look at, and hopefully it'll help you protect against the hackers. So the famous joke is you got the two guys out camping, and all of a sudden a bear comes out of the woods, and the first guy starts tying his sneakers, and the second guy says to him, "Why are you bothered to tie your sneakers? You can't outrun a bear." And the first guy says, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." And that's kind of the way it is with hackers. Everybody else has left their front door wide open and cash sitting on the front doorstep, all you got to do is lock your door and the hacker is going to move on to the easy prey. And, that's sort of the thing is if you're just a little bit tougher, they're going to move right on.
Yeah.
Great. Good questions,
Great.
everybody.
So make sure everyone takes that poll that you receive after so that you can get these bonuses and set yourself up. And with that, Marcus, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Dave. Dave, I'm one of those millennials that has everything on his phone. I have my insurance card on my phone. So all the information that you provided today is extremely useful for me. I want to thank you for keeping this workshop real, relevant, and actionable. Your homework assignment is succinct and powerful. The Dulye Leadership Experience is committed to providing robust learning and networking resources like what you just experienced today. As you can see on this chart, your complimentary membership to the DLE opens the door to a wide array of professional development resources and programs. Nearly all are free with your membership. Programs like this take a dedicated volunteer team to create. Stress volunteer team. I'd like to extend tremendous gratitude to our behind-the-scenes team. They are the DLE Programming Committee members, Evie Rodriguez, Kaylee Carmel, John Semexon, Sherry Statton, Nicole Hall, Michelle Lopez, and Kirsten Westerman. Thank you, Linda Dulye, the DLE President and Founder, for making these networking experiences possible. Linda's consulting firm, Dulye & Co., has been the sole underwriter of all DLE programming and operations since its founding in 2008. In addition to producing Dave's workshop, the DLE this week has unveiled a completely new website, and the website is unbelievable. We call it Smashing because it makes it easier than ever to connect with DLE programs. Go to dle.dulye.com. Once again, that website is dle.dulye.com to check it out. And if you currently are not a DLE member, please complete our complimentary membership form that's on the new website.